The privilege to be able to jump back into our limud of Likutei Moharan, beginning Torah Yud Beis. And I made reference to Torah Yud Beis a number of times when I spoke about the radical nature of some of Rebbe Nachman's teachings. And Torah Yud Beis is about as radical as it gets, in many ways, as we're going to see. And it's a difficult teaching, and on the surface it's very grating, and it's very difficult. We're going to try to present it in the proper context and with the appropriate yishuv hadas. But let's dive into it, all b'siyata d'shmaya, for the sake of bringing kavod of Hashem into the world through the teachings of the tzaddikim. Lashon Rabbeinu Zichrono Livracha. The following teaching is Rebbe Nachman's own words. And he begins with the pasuk in Tehillim, Tehila leDavid arimimcha Hashem. Where David HaMelech is praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu for lifting him up. Arimimcha Hashem kidlisani v'lo samachta oveli. Masha anu royim. This, or it's a different pasuk? Huh? Yes, okay. Yes. Okay, so he says like this, Masha anu royim. This that we see, sha'al pi haroiv, that generally speaking, haloimdim, those who are devoted to studying Gemara, chalkim al tzadikim. They argue with tzadikim, v'doiver malat tzadik, asak begaiva vavuz, which is a paraphrase of another pasuk in Tehillim, where David is decrying the tzadikim those who are speaking against the tzaddikim, begaiva, with arrogance, vavuz, and this sense of inappropriate castigation. Says Rebbe Nachman, this is straight from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is part of the plan. Ki yesh b'chinas Yaakov Lavan, because there exists in the world these two kinds of tzaddikim, where on the surface they look the same, because both of them are Yerei Shamayim and both of them are learning Torah. But one of them is Yaakov and one of them is Lavan. Yaakov hu tzaddik amachadish chidushin deraisa v'lo mitarasa l'shma. Yaakov is the tzaddik who's learning Torah l'shma. And about this tzaddik, the goodness is hidden and will be steadily revealed throughout history, the greatness of these tzaddikim who are very humble and very hidden, but devoted themselves to learning Torah l'shma and to be mechadash chidushin d'oraisa. K'may she'amar Rabbi Yisrael Zichrono Livracha, hayayim la'asaysam and lamachar lekabel scharam. Ve'al shem schari l'basayif al shem zenikra Yaakov. And that's why they're called Yaakov in this context, because of this, that they're connected most directly, not to the moment, but to the future, to the Saif. Because Yaakov is Lashon Akev, V'Saif, Schar l'Basayf. At the end, they're going to receive their full reward. Okay, listen, you have to be careful with the following words. Okay? V'Lavan hu Talmud Chacham Shed Yehudi. Okay, this aspect of Lavan is a Talmud Chacham who is a Jewish demon, a Jewish shade. That his Torah is just to increase his own glory, ulekanter, and to have ways of being able to argue with people. The Talmud Chacham kazez, the Gemara tells us and the Medrash tells us, nevela toiva himenu. This kind of quote unquote Talmud Chacham, nevela toiva himenu. A carcass, a dead animal, is better than him. Okay, so whoa, that's heavy stuff. That is heavy stuff. Oh, it's a Jewish demon, Talmud Chacham, nevela toiva himenu. We have to deconstruct this just for a bit. Let's begin at the end. This expression, Talmud Chacham, nevela toiva himenu, is referred to again as Chazal. And Chazal understood what it meant to learn Torah, and Chazal understood what it meant not to learn Torah, and they understood that there's a very fine line between these two kinds of learning. And they understood that even if on the outside it looks like there's a certain person who from the standpoint of knowledge and from the standpoint of devotion is completely identical to the person sitting next to him in the Beis Medrash. It could be that one is a Talmud Chacham Amiti, and it could be the other one is the Talmud Chacham, still a Talmud Chacham because they know a lot of information, but Nevela Taive Menu from the standpoint of authenticity and from the standpoint of Dveikas B'Hashem and what their intention is in the learning, because it's not just about the doing, but it's about the intention, and it's about the general context within which our learning is taking place. Rebbe Nachman is really doing nothing more than quoting a Chazal. What's very dramatic is Rebbe Nachman's association between those Talmidei Chachamim who Nevela Toivei Menu and those who are arguing against Tzaddikim, which in the context seems to be talking about the totality of the Misnagdim, right? Who came against, because that's who they were. They were the Laimdim who argued against the Chasidim. And it gets even more dramatic because then he uses this bizarre terminology of Shade Yehudi, they're Chas v'Shalom, they're demons, not just that Nevela Toivei Menu is bad enough, but I'd rather be a carcass than a demon, so this is a very intense paragraph, and it requires a lot of hispoinus, and I don't usually do this because we usually stay on the page, but I just thought it would be very important to read this short little passage on page 450 from what I believe is one of the most powerful and useful perushim on Likutei Moharan. It's relatively recent. It's called Ote Ar. It's 4 volumes by Rav Atiyah. And he brings over here in the footnotes, which is why I like it, because a lot of the other mefarshim just sort of collect all the standard perushim that you'll find from the Parpers L'Chachma, the Ibi Anachal, and the Mei Anachal, and others, and they just sort of synthesize them. But he's bringing his own. He's bringing his own chidushim. He had his own things to say and to clarify, which is very beautiful. He's a huge Talmud Chacham. He's the son of one of the great Svardishim Mekubalim of the last generation, and became a Breslover. So he writes over here. I'm just going to read you a few lines. I'll very rarely do this, but just for this, he says, Adayin ein lahakchesh asamitzias. Because later on in the lesson, Rebbe Nachman is going to say, how does the Torah not bring these people to tshuva? Meaning, Sachakol, they're learning, the Torah as ha'ar sheba machzir b'lamutav. So why doesn't it work that the Torah should help these people? Because they clearly are distant. So who are we talking about? So he says, Adayin ein lahakchesh asamitzias. We cannot deny the reality. That there were true and total tzaddikim shekala olam kulei royed v'roigesh mipeneim arayim, that the whole world is shaking and trembling from their Torah until today. Shacholku b'toikev gadol al gedolei hachasidus, who fought against the gedolei hachasidus. And over here, Lubavitch might have a slightly different opinion than in Breslov, but a kedugmas hagoyin mivilnas chus yagun aleinu. That in Breslov the goyin was a tzaddik. And the Geulah is someone who's held in great esteem by the Breslover Chasidim, in addition to all the tzaddikim. Rebbe Nachman wanted that we should learn from everyone. I think I mentioned in one of the introductory series that one of the draws that I felt to Breslov was their willingness to learn from everything, and that demonstrated, at least to me, and it's not to the exclusion of anybody else that has different approaches, but to me, that demonstrated a tremendous confidence. The Shpal Zayda didn't produce much Torah, but even there. Yeah, even though Rebbe Nachman said very strong things, the one that fought against Reb Nassan, not so clear. But the Shpal Zayda was built into the theology of Rebbe Nachman, who spoke about even though he said very sharp things against the Shpal Zayda. It's true. But each tzaddik is different, and the guy Mivil, wasn't the Shpal Zayda. It's a different thing. The Shpal Zayda came within the Beis Medrash of Chassidus. The Geulah is representing the entire contrary approach, which later tzaddikim felt was very important for the development of the Chassidish movement, with all the pain and so on. You have to also be able probably to distinguish between the Geulah b'chvoida v'atzmai and maybe some of the people that were mamshechei derech that acted in ways that the Geulah might not act in the same way that the Satmar Rebbe had his shitas, but probably would never approve of some of the ways that those that call themselves by the name Satmar Chassidim are acting in later generations. Over here he's using the Geulah Vilna, right? It was quoted by Breslover Chassidim freely. And other true, holy, and awesome tzaddikim. That we cannot call these Jewish demons. It is certainly true that we're not speaking about them here. And he brings there was a story that's brought in Siach Sarvei Kodesh which is the sort of the Torah Shebal Peh in a way of Breslau, which is very important, for a person who's learning Rebbe Nachman. And this is what distinguishes between people that are learning it stam as an intellectual exercise, which some do, and those that are really interested in getting close to the tzaddik. We have to be learning also the literature that's not the Torah literature, because it's absolutely one, especially Rebbe Nachman's Torah. So much of it was born out of circumstances that were happening at the time, current events, dynamics between Rebbe Nachman and the Hasidim. So a person needs to be learning Chai Moharan, which is mostly an easy read, but you have to understand the history. And a person really has to be learning Yemei Maranat, which is Rebbe Nassan's autobiography. It's translated, both of these, as Tzaddik, that's Chai Moharan, Tzaddik, that's the book by BRI, Breslov Research Institute, and Through Fire and Water. Very, very important. And then there's so many others from his Koich and there's Siach Sarfei Kodesh, a few volumes from Rav Levi Yitzchak Bender, what he was able to transmit it. And that's that's a little bit more, you get into the Ruach, and there's so many things that are unsaid that over there are spoken at explicitly. So here, there's a little anecdote that's brought in Siach Sarfei Kodesh, that Rabbeinu Omer LeMaranat, Rabbeinu said to the Maranat, HaChoisen Shelchahu Tzaddik. He said, your father-in-law is a tzaddik. Because Rav Nassan's father-in-law was a huge misnagid. I think his name was Rav David Tzvi Orbach. Sometimes I mix up his first name, but the last name was Orbach. He was a Goyin Gadol. He was a huge, huge, huge Rav. And he had many different locales under his, sort of rabbinical authority. He was a Gadol B'Torah. And he was a big misnagid. And he made Rav Nassan's life miserable. And then in the end, he acquiesced, but it was a very, very difficult period of time. And Rebbe Nachman said, listen, I want you to know your father-in-law is a tzaddik. This that he argues against Chasidim, no, okay, I'll get another whip, I'll get another patch. But that's not, that's a small thing, okay? This is his thing. And then he'll see the truth, and then he'll realize, no, they weren't as bad as you thought they were. Seder. But that's not, you don't become a Shade Yehudi because you follow a different Messiah. Okay, I think that's a very, very important clarification to make at the outset. Now we've sweetened already a lot of it, right? We're not speaking about all the loimdim, and we're not making judgments, but we are speaking about a reality, which again is not Rebbe Nachman's Chiddush, but is already in Chazal. And then one more comment on the Shade Yehudi bit, which is not what it sounds like. On the surface, a person reads this Shade Yehudi. You say this person is Jewish and he's a demon. This is a Jewish demon, right? But he happens to be he's Jewish because he's Jewish, but he's a demon, and that's what it means. That's not what it means. If you look in Tanya, Perek Ches, the Baal Tanya makes a distinction between Shade Nuchra'in and Shade Yehudayin. Non-Jewish Shadim, as it were, and Jewish Shadim, which is rooted in the Zohar HaKadosh, who speaks already about this concept of the Jewish demonic energy and the non-Jewish demonic energy. And actually, there's a tremendous distinction between them. Because in the Tanya's setup, the Sheidu Nuchra'in are connected to the Shalosh Klipos Hatmeis Legamri, and those are energies that cannot be elevated, right? So they're not holy energies, and they come from the other side, and the Hebrew word shade, right, is connected in some sense to the English word shade, which means that it's the opposite of light. It's a darkness. It's a shadow. And it cannot be elevated, that shadow. As is Yedua in the Baal Tanya's arrangement outside of Chasidi Umsa Olam, right? And the Geder of which is a matter of discussion. But over there, they can elevate, but generally speaking, not elevatable. That's not in the consciousness that they're in, generally speaking. Shadin Yehudayin is the shadow of the Jewish experience, which is Klipas Noga, right? Which can be elevated. It's not absolutely asur and kosher and bound up into the realm of darkness. It could be elevated. Right? So if a person doesn't know that context, and all of a sudden you see shade in Yudah, and you say, this is a Jewish demon. No, Rebbe Nachman is saying, this is a shadow that actually could be elevated. Because it's a mitzvah that they're doing, which is the Liban Torah. And ultimately, in the current context, Nevela Toive Menu, and they're speaking against the tzaddikim arrogantly, with cynicism and without sincerity, and etc., etc. But the Rebbe says, no, it's just a shade Yudai, not a shade Nuchrai. Okay, sweeten the paragraph enough with context. Good. Says the Hiliger Rebbe, V'zeh and it's known she'in a nikra Talmud Chacham el Yedei Torah Shebal Peh. A person is only called a Talmid Chacham if they're studying and mastering Torah Shabbal Peh. A person who learns Chumash, it's sweet and it's beautiful, and that might be their chelik in Torah, but that's not a Talmid Chacham. Talmid Chacham, Talmud, right? Chacham is a person who's a Chacham in the Chochmah of the Talmud, in the Gemara and Paiskim. Now, ukishaloymid b'lei das nikra lavan. When a person learns without das, so then automatically a person is called lavan. And this doesn't necessarily mean that automatically this person then becomes this Talmid Chacham Shed Yehudai, where Nevela Toive Menu, we're going to learn about that later. No, over here, it's just a person who's like in the beginning of the process before that person turned into, this what we're speaking about. And they're called Lavan, but already they're called Lavan, Al Shem Armimia Shenichnas Bai, because already their learning is in a way of trickery. And Rebbe Nachman Likutei Halachos, and we mentioned this in the past, following the tradition already of Kadmonim, of the Maharal and the Orchis Tzadikim, and others, and the Shlach Kadosh, who railed against what they call Pilpulim Shel Hevel, right? Which is just a methodology of learning where we're coming up with Pilpulim, but it isn't resonant necessarily with the MS, or we're not able to paskin halacha l'maisa. Sometimes you could have that, right? Big time chacham or with mental gymnastics, but you ask them, are you willing to paskin like that? And then, no, we don't paskin. This is just, it's just learning. I'm not going to paskin, right? And that's usually an indicator as to how much they believe in the truth of what they're saying, or they don't believe in the truth of what they're saying. I remember I was at the levaya of Rebelsky. What was his first name? Rebbe Yisrael Belsky. In the Mir, it came to Eretz Yisrael. I was learning in the Mir at the time, and this was one of the Maspidim said this. He said he was a Paisik who he believed his conclusions, and he was willing to stand by them, and he was willing to take shacharis for them. They weren't pilpulim shel hevel, and his learning was le'uvda l'maisa, right? But it could be that through learning, and it's an expression of gaiva that our mimius nichnas by. That we're willing to contort ourselves and contort the Torah in order to squeeze like something out, like maybe ulai b'derech efshar, but it's not. It's an armimius. And then what happens is next stage is v'soin v'roidev tzadikim. Then they become haters, and they become the misnagdim, v'roidev tzadikim, and they run after tzadikim and they pursue them and they make their lives miserable. And that's Tzaddik Elyon and Tzaddik Tachton. They run after two Tzaddikim. The Tzaddik Elyon, which we're going to learn in a minute, what that is, and Tzaddik Tachton, the lower Tzaddik, the upper Tzaddik and the lower Tzaddik. Because it's brought in the Zohar Kadosh, Ki Shchinta bein Trei Tzaddikai, Yasva Kamesha Kasa B'Zohar Tzaddikim Yirshou Aretz, Tzaddikim Trei Mashma. It's brought that the Tzaddikim will inherit the land, and the Zohar Kadosh says two tzaddikim, and the land, Eretz, is always a reference to Malchus. Malchus is always the Shechina. Says the Zohar Kadosh, tzaddikim yirshu aretz. The Shechina sits between two tzaddikim, the tzaddik Elyon and the tzaddik Tachton. What's the tzaddik Elyon and the tzaddik Tachton? Ushnei tzaddikim elu heim ze'al tzaddik shechidesh zois haTorah sheba'al peh. The Tzaddik Elyon is the Tana or the Amayra that the person is learning their teachings in the Gemara. That's called Tzaddik Elyon, the Tzaddik that was already nostalgic from the world is in Shemayim. And the Tzaddik Tachton is Shalom and Achidushim. And the lower Tzaddik is the Tzaddik that's learning the Chidushim, right, that are taught by this Tzaddik Elyon. The Torah Shabal Peh hu Shchinta. And Torah Shabal Peh is the Shechina. It's Malchus. It's the production of Knesset Yisrael below. It's the Torah that's born out of our own back and forth, our own lived experience. I was very drunk on the phone with one of my friends on Purim, and I immediately launched into this whole drasha about why Purim is connected to the English word forum. It just popped in my head. Forum is, what's a forum? Forum is when chaver get together and they have a discussion, and from the discussion of the forum, something comes out from that. And Purim is all about the Shechina, and the Shechina is the forum, because the Shechina is the collected sparks of Knesset Yisrael that all of us get together, and we produce the Torah from the give and the take, the shakla and the tarya of our own experiences and our own chidush and kol masha Talmud avasik asal eschadesh nemer l'Moshe b'Sinai. Right? Chazal tell us that already anything that was going to be originated was included in Moshe Rabbeinu's Torah, but it flows out through the generations, like Rav Kook describes, in waves from generation to generation. And so Purim is forum, because it's all about the revelation of the Shekhinah, and the Shekhinah is produced by this forum of the Pardes of Klal Yisrael that are sitting throughout the generations and be mechadish Torah Shabbat Peh. Moshe Kasav Malchus Peh. Torah Shabbat Peh is Malchus, is Shechina, because it says in Pesach Eliyah, the beginning of Tikkun Zayar, Malchus Peh. Malchus is associated with the mouth, and the spheres of Atzilus, which are all in the face. So over here you have the two eyes and the two nostrils and the two ears, all connected the spheres, and in this context, Malchus, the mouth, which is on the bottom, the lowest, is Malchus. Malchus Peh, V'Torah Shabbat Peh Karin Allah, and Torah Shabbat Peh is associated with Malchus. So that's the Shechina. When a person is learning Gemara, which is literally the Shechina, it comes within the mouth of a Talmud Chacham Shed Yehudi who is learning for all the wrong reasons, and whose learning is not bringing them to a state of dveikus and to a state of consciousness. On the contrary, the only thing that's magnified through their learning is themselves and their own kavod. Zenikr is Galus Hashchina. This is Galus Hashchina. The Gemara is in Galus, in their mouth. Doesn't belong there, because it doesn't belong in the mouth of such a person. Va'az yesh le peh, and that transforms into a mouth that's ledaber al tzadik asik begay v'vavuz. That leads to this, that he's speaking against tzaddikim. And it's the Tarshva, as we're going to see, it's the Gemara itself that turns into that. And like we learned in Torah Aleph, and we've been tracking a sort of a theme from lesson to lesson, we learned that Malchus could either be one way or another way. We learned in Torah Aleph about the Levana, right? You can either have a Levana, which is Malchus, that's transmitting the light of the sun, and that's an experience of this world that's bursting with godliness, Torah Tes, right? That's a world of miracles, that's an Eretz Yisraelic world, that's a world of wonder, that's a world of Pele. Or you could have the Havach. Vayivas Esav Esabachayra, like we learned in Torah Aleph, V'chafra HaLevana. The Levana is humiliated, it's a moon that's dark. And it's a world that conceals HaKadosh Baruch Hu instead of revealing HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Here, it's the same Bechina. We just come down into the microcosm of a person's own Levana, so to speak, which is their mouth, which can either be transmitting and reflecting God's light that their learning becomes an experience of Dveikus, or Chas v'Shalom, it's the opposite. And not only is it not shining HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light, it becomes Malchus to Sitra Achra. And it becomes mamish the other side, the exact opposite of the intention of the Tanoim and the Amiram, whose Torah we're learning. However, listen to how beautiful this is, an extreme, but how beautiful, extremely beautiful. Listen to this. When a person learns with the right intention, and kedusha and tara, a din in Gemara, some kind of sugya or a psak, shechidish ezetana itzadik acher, which is exactly, by the way, what we're doing. It's not Gemara, but it's still Torah Shabbat Peh. It's nichlal in that, without a question. From this tana or this tzadik al yidei nasa b'chinas neshikin. This is kissing. This is an intimate connection of kissing, which v'neshikin ze b'chinas is dabkus rucha berucha. This is the connection of spirit to spirit. And this theme has come up again and again now in Torah Ches, in Torah Yud, right? The ruach of the tzaddik, where a person's connecting their own ruach to the ruach of the tzaddik through a kiss of yishakenim in Neshikas Piyu. Ki apsak hazeh hu diburai shalatana. And I'm now going to just revert to, instead of talking about psak, we'll talk about the Torah that we're learning now, because we're literally experiencing this in this moment. The Torah that's the chiddush of the tzaddik is the dibur of the Tana, especially this lesson, which is literally Lashon Rabbeinu Zechron Lebracha, Gesundheit. The dibur hu achiyas, and the dibur flows forth from a person's very vitality, kameshikasav lenefesh chaya, that Adam and Chava were created as living beings, lenefesh chaya v'targumai, and the Targum Unkelis is leruach memadula. They became speaking spirit. So you see that the memalala, that the words of the tzaddik carry the ruach of the tzaddik. Le ruach memalala. And we learned in previous Torahs about the ruach of the tzaddik, but what's the ruach of the, where's the ruach of the tzaddik? Says the Rebbe, le ruach memalala. It's in the words of the tzaddik. The ruach memalala hainu nefesh chaya. This ruach memalala, this speaking spirit, which is the nefesh chaya, which is the living life force, who ba mitar shabal peh. It comes from the Torah of the tzaddik, Meshikasav, taitzi haaretz nefesh chaya. So nefesh chaya is the ruach memalala, right? So the ruach memalala, the spirit of the tzaddik that goes into the words, is hidden within the nefesh chaya. And where are you going to find nefesh chaya? Taitzi haaretz nefesh chaya. What's aretz is malchus. Malchus, tar shabal peh. So in the Torah Shabbat Peh that the tzaddik is mechadish, the nefesh chaya, that's Taitzei Eretz, is the ruach memalala nimsa. We find that it emerges that b'shashem mechadish atana is a chiddush and medaber is a chiddush. When the Heilige Tana is revealing a chiddush and he's speaking out this chiddush, or he's recording it in his writings, zehadibor ba'atzme b'chinas hatar Shabbat Peh shechidesh. Over there is his Tar Shabbat Peh kimisham mitzah, because that's where it emerged from. Kamashikasav Taitzei Eretz nefesh chaya. Nimtza achshav, it emerges, therefore, like Kishalayim dem es ha-chiddush hazeh, when you learn this chiddush of the tzaddik, ukishmachnisan alimar v'chiddush b'saych peh, and when we use our mouths to speak out the Torah of the tzaddik, which is what we're doing now, as we learned in Torah Yud Aleph, right, about the importance of learning the Torah of the tzaddik, b'peh maleh, with our words, nimtza shemedabkim ruach ha-tzaddik, shechiddush zeh ha-chiddush, the very words, and therefore the spirit of the tzaddik who wrote these words and invested the consciousness within them, im ruach memalala, is merging with the ruach memalala, with the spoken word of the one who is learning the Torah of the tzaddik. Hainu beruach, hainu im adibor haloimed, with the words that the loimed is speaking. Zeh chiddush achshav, v'zois histabkas rucha berucha nikra neshikin. And this is a kiss. Because the mouth of the tzaddik who is being mechadash the chidush and the ruach memalala of a taitzia eretz nefesh chaya ruach memalala, is uniting with the mouth of the one who is speaking the words of the tzaddik. And there's a bechina of neshikin, bechina of a kiss. Nimsa, it emerges kishalayim dem ez halacha shechidish atanoim, when you're learning a halacha that was mechadash by the Tanaim. There's an intermingling between the spirit of that tzaddik, in this case a Tana, and in our case Rebbe Nachman, or any of the tzaddikim whose Torah we're learning, and it merges with the one who's learning it. And this is a very bizarre terminology that you find. It translated literally, it's a nosheket atzmo. He's kissing himself imatana, together with the Tana. And you find the same terminology, which we're going to get to about Be'ezus Hashem in Torah Lamed Gimel, where the Rebbe over there speaks about loving others, shalom between oneself and others. And Rebbe Nachman, I'll just read you the lashon because it's strikingly similar. And over there also it's very difficult to understand why the Rebbe uses this lashon, but over there at least you can find some explanation for it. But the Rebbe uses these words, v'yachol lehoiv es atzmoi im Hashem yizbarach, and to love himself with Hashem. It's very, very beautiful and deep, and we're going to get there, but not for now. But I'm just pointing out that the Rebbe uses this terminology, and it requires Iyun, not doing this now, just learning B'kiyas. I'm just pointing it out to understand this noshek et atzmo im hatana. And on a certain level, it's very possible that, like the Baal Tanya sets this up, all of Klal Yisrael, and the Chassam Sofer also says something very similar, all of Klal Yisrael is one organism. And we've mentioned this also, I think, in Torah Beis, when we spoke about all of us are just part of something much, much, much bigger. It turns out that the tzaddik is part of me. One second, the tzaddik is part of me, and I am part of the tzaddik. And this that because meaning me is Klal Yisrael, right? We are all Klal Yisrael, not me as an individual, but the real me is the whole Knesset Yisrael. In that case, if I'm connecting to the tzaddik, who's the bechina of the Rosh B'nai Yisrael, Rosh Hashanah's Rebbe, right? That they're, like the Baal Tanya says, is the Rosh, and we are, or I am, at the very bottom of the heel, right? The ikvus of the Mashiach. But in as much as I can connect to the Rosh, So then I'm not just connecting to something objectively outside of me, or subjectively rather, I am part of that. And so in a certain deep way, I'm noshek et atzmo imatana, meaning I'm connecting to the part of me that's being projected by the Tana. I'm not communicating this clearly enough, but that's part of it. Yeah, very quickly though, yeah.
The Hebrew noshek et atzmo would say myself.
Right.
But that's if we take noshek as active on oneself. If we define etzem as almost something almost separate from, then you can say noshek hu et atzmo as on the object or on the etzem, and we define etzem as being something as in a part of us, which is part of everyone, as in etzem me'atzomai. Then it's more about working what does etzem mean in the context of other times. Beautiful. That etzem is written.
Beautiful. Yeah, on a simple level though, atzmo generally in this context is speaking about oneself, generally, although you're right, etzem me'atzomai and the concept of etzem it doesn't necessarily have to be referring to oneself. And a little bit that's what I'm mentioning is that there's some kind of intermediate point, right, where we are all one, which is not me and it's not the Tana, it's us, and that's what we're trying to mention. Yeah.
If the Tzaddik was speaking to you, the air would be going through your mouth this way. But if you're speaking out the words of the Tzaddik, he is within you and you're speaking out his words. So it's like the Tzaddik's talking through you. So in that sense, it's coming from inside you.
And therefore, agreed.
So that's why it's like kissing yourself with the Tzaddik, because it's that within you. It's like when Hashem says to Moshe, "I will speak to you," and you.
So you're saying it's happening within you.
Yes.
No sheget atzmo.
Yeah.
Okay, could be. Again, it requires a lot of Ian, and all this is true. I'm sure all this is true. Noishik et atzmo imatana. We're just pointing out an interesting lashon, and we're going to see in Torah Lamed Gimel. We're going to be able to qualify that a little bit more. Al Talmud Chacham Shed Yehudi, but a Talmud Chacham Shed Yehudi. Kishaloi mid Gemara Psak Din, when he's learning Gemara, Psak Din, Alav Kasav, about him the pasuk says in Mishlei, Ne'et Taras Neshika Sainei, that the kisses of an enemy are burdensome, they're not taras. Ki atana eni yachal isval rucha shel Talmud Chacham Shed Yehudi, they suffer from this. That there are people who are learning their words, and they're doing so with all the wrong intentions. That's not why the Tanaim revealed Torah Shebal Peh. Kimi yachalis bol nashik is atzmeim nevela. Who can handle kissing himself with a carcass? Right. So over here also you see the same terminology, but the other way around. So maybe it is relevant, maybe it isn't. It requires thought. And kol shekain shenevela toivei menu. You can't kiss a carcass, but you certainly can't kiss that which is worse than a carcass. So who can handle that? Ne'etars neshika sainei. And here the Rebbe qualifies, not just Tanoim and not just Gemara or Halacha, but it's true for all tzaddikim. Even tzaddikim that kvar holchel olamam, that have already risen to the next world. When we sit and we learn their Torah, we are literally connecting to their ruach. Their lips are moving. Says the Rebbe, why their lips? It's such a difficult thing to understand. Why is that happening? Says the Rebbe, you know what this means? Not that their lips are moving because their mouths are saying the words. That's usually what we think. Their lips are moving into a kissing like this. Their lips are moving because they're being kissed and because they are kissing. That's how the Rebbe understands. Yaakov kissed Rachel and he lifted his voice and he cried. Now Perish Rashi, Rashi explains that the reason why Yaakov was crying is because he already foresaw that Rachel is not going to be buried with him in the Ma'aras HaMachpelah, that she would be buried along the way as a result, ironically, of Yaakov Avinu's curse, not knowing who had stolen the Trofim. But ultimately he knew that she was going to be buried in Kever Rachel and not in the Ma'aras HaMachpelah. Says the Rebbe, what's the depth? Rachel is a bechin of Torah Shebal Peh. Rachel is the aspect of Torah Shebal Peh. Ki Yadua, Rachel is Malchus, right? Rachel and Leah. Leah is Binah. Rachel is Malchus. Yaakov is Tiferes. That's standing between both of them, right? And being Miyachid, Binah, and Malchus. But Rachel is always Malchus, and that's Torah Shebal Peh. Sheika Rachel Lifnei Geizezeha. The pasuk says in Yeshayahu that the Torah Shebal Peh Malchus is like a sheep before it is shorn. And it has so much wool. Rachel is like a sheep, right? Because it's her name, but it could mean a sheep before its wool is cut. That it requires us to come along and to cut, so to speak, off the wool of Torah Shebal Peh and to process it and turn it into halacha, like we learned in Torah Tes, I believe. Yeah, exactly. Yes, they were weaving it while it was still on Kavalatam. So there's something very deep about that. And then it becomes garments. You take the kvasim, the keves, the sheep, just another word for sheep, and you turn it into the garments. You have a garment, so become a katzin, become a captain, become a priest. Not a priest, become a leader for us. And that's a concept of malchus. Right? So all of this is malchus. Rachel is malchus, and Rachel of Zeha, that people are shearing off the wool and turning it into halacha. That makes levushim. Levushim is connected to a katzin, which is melech, a melech, malchus. It's all malchus. Kisha adam kasher loy metaras hatana, az hatana noshek otov uhu noshek hatana. Like we said, when a person learns the Torah of the tzaddik, we said already that he's kissing the tzaddik. The tzaddik is kissing him. V'goyrim tainug gadol hatana, and this brings tremendous tainug to the Tana, because the Tana just wants to be loved, and we just want to be loved, and the Torah has to be a Torah of love. It has to be a Torah of authenticity. It's not transactional. It's not a business meeting. It's not, what can I get from this so that I could whatever. It's a moment of intimacy. Torah has to be intimate. Our connection to tzaddikim has to be intimate. And that brings tainuk to us and tainuk to the tzaddikim. Like we said, so what's going on here in the pasuk? Yaakov is the Tana, like we already said, because what's the opposite of Yaakov Avinu is the Lavan. Right, so Yaakov Avinu is the Spitz Talmud Chacham, right, that's doing it right. He kisses Rachel. Rachel is Torah Shebal Peh Shechidesh. Shenishek v'dibek es ruchai, that is the kiss of the tzaddik. Vayishak Yaakov l'Rachel. The Torah Shebal Peh becomes the kiss of the tzaddik that is just waiting to be accessed by the lips of the other, which is the one who's coming to learn the Torah of the tzaddik. V'dibek es rucha b'ruach hakodesh hab'shchina, and he connects his ruach to the ruach of the Torah that is being mechadish, which is the shchina. Vayefk, and he cries. Shetzafa b'ruach hakodesh shaloi, because the Tana sees with his ruach hakodesh, shahoitzim mipiv v'hichnis b'soich haTorah Shebal Peh, who put his ruach into the words that he's being mechadish, which is the Torah Shebal Peh. V'ra'a, and he sees shebagalus hazeh al pi roiv haloimdim einam hagunim. He sees that in exile, and Rebbe Nachman is generalizing. He says al pi roiv. He says, generally speaking, the ones who are going to be learning the Torah, that the Tana and the Amoira and all the Tzaddikim are Mechadish, are not doing so for the right reasons. Nimtza shal yedei limudam sheyilmadu lo tikanis ruach hakodesh al racha shel Torah Shebal Peh lekvura. So he says he sees that his kisses are not going to merit kivura, which is sisais of doivabais bekever. They're not going to have that experience of being accessed when they're already left the world and the Torah is in a dusty book somewhere. Not. She'ein sisais doivabais bekever. Aydi limuda shel rasha. From the limud of the rasha, va'ayidei va'yefk al galusai. This is galus hashchina. And that tzaddik it's like he kissed, and he just put his kiss in the air, and he's waiting for someone to catch it. Like we kiss our children, and you blow a kiss, and you want them to catch it. And the tzaddik blew a kiss. Likutei Moharan is a kiss. The tzaddik just blew a kiss. And he's crying. Because he knows, that first of all his kiss is largely ignored, let's say. But there are other tzaddikim who blew a kiss, and the kiss is not being engaged in a proper way. It's netaris neshika soine. It's not causing that there's sisais of doivavais bekever. So this is Vayishak Yaakov l'Rachel. The Tana puts a kiss into the world. It's the Bechina of Rachel, the Torah Shebal Peh. But Vayefk. But he cries. You know why he cries? Because Rashi says, because he sees she'eina nechnesas ima lekvura. Because that kiss is never going to be engaged in such a way that's going to cause that success of Davivois Bekever. How gorgeous is this? And how radical is this? I was saying, you know, the intimacy with which Rebbe Nachman is describing the connection between the Chassid and the Rebbe, the Tana and the Loimed, is so tender. It's so tender. And it evokes what we learned in Torah Zion about the Eitzah, right? About how a person receives an Eitzah from a tzaddik, Rebbe Nachman says, that's reproduction. You know, this is not a joke. This is a serious relationship. You know, this is the real thing. Yichud, mamash yichud. Mamash yichud. And people who don't learn Torah in this way, they can't understand this yichud. They can't understand it because they never encountered Torah that filled them up, mamish, like we would hope to be filled up in a relationship. Because it was never about the relationship. It's just a checklist. They sit and they learn this sefer and that sefer. But they didn't come to it from a place of brokenness, and therefore they didn't even have the capacity to be filled with it. But when we approach the Torah from a place of humility and lack, and we're willing to open ourselves up, then you get full. And then you can begin to understand what it means, you know, hiskashrus to tzaddikim. That in direct proportion with the lamdim al pirayiv, that's lavan, that's not what's it called, there's a total rejection of this concept of connection to tzaddikim, who needs it. You see, because the Rebbe says, these two things are connected together. And that's exactly what he began with. That al pirayiv, these lamdim, that are cholkim al tzaddikim, are the bechina of lavan, because these two things go together. And they're not bad, and they're not wicked. It's just, it's not their fault. It's the education, you know. And with tremendous rachmanas, we daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that He should open up the eyes of the whole Klal Yisrael. That they should rediscover their ki atem ma'at mikol ha'amim, she'atem amitem atzmechem, and to approach Torah with humility. So it says, V'al yidei zevayef al galusai. And furthermore, that sometimes it's true. Oh wow, we're way over time. I'm so sorry. Okay, we're just finishing this, and then we'll finish. And it's true. Maybe even worse, that's the lamdin who really saw a chiddush in a sefer. He doesn't want to quote in the name of the sefer because he wants to make ki'ilu it's his own chiddush. And he doesn't say it in the name of the Tana. Right? He's not even, bringing the Tana into it. He caught a kiss, he rejected it, and he projected it. Ki'ilu, he's the one who originated it. Chas v'shalom, kein aimer b'shem amrei, and we know that the Gemara says that what does that bring to the world? Gullus. That brings exile into the world. And the flip side of that is Kala Aimer Davar B'Shem Amrei Mevi Geulah La'olam. And the whole sefer Likutei Moharan, like we're learning, and we set it up in that document, right? Stream of consciousness is Geulah consciousness. Geulah consciousness is Aimer Davar B'Shem Amrei. And now we could understand that on a much deeper level, because it isn't just, it's very nice that you said something in the name of who you learned it from. It means that your learning was a bechina of neshika, was a bechina of yichud. With all the associated traits that come along with a person who's not Lavan, but who's Yaakov Avinu, this is maybe Geulah La'olam, because Geulah is coming down through a general cluster of spirit, right, which is all different facets of this one diamond, which is a spirit that's made algorithmically of many different data points and many different aspects. It's a ruach, very difficult to just define. But through the whole Likutei Moharan, every lesson and every concept, we're building, slowly but surely, this koma shlema of what this spirit of Lev Basar, of Breslev is. But this is a very important station along that journey, because this bechina of the hiskashrus to tzaddikim and the learning in the way of neshika, and the coming to it from the standpoint of the mekabel, and to sit together, in a spirit of awe and wonder and yichud with the ruach of the tzaddik, that's mevi Geulah La'olam. We should be zeicha to see this light continue to spread and spread and spread, wick by wick, like we learned last night, very strongly, flame by flame, because this is the future for the whole Klal Yisrael. This is what we're supposed to be as a nation. Geulah people. And then really, collectively, we can maybe the Geulah to the whole Olam, Be'ezras Hashem. Yasher Kehal Yedidim. Good start.
Why is it Lavan and Esav?
Because Rebbe Nachman was using the armimius, right, the trickery Shabbat, that Esav didn't have so much, but Lavan, it represents that. And also, because in the next psukim, which is right after Vayishach Yaakov Lo Rachel Vayisuk Le'Vayevk, is going to be a reference to Lavan, and we're going to that's the next paragraph. We're going to bring that in.
שכל כך אוהב אותי האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני